Acrimony has continued to manifest among parties taking part in national dialogue that is expected to address conflict among parties and Zambians in general. As at Friday, 13 parties had announced withdrawal from ZCID, effectively dealing a blow to hopes of having a successful dialogue process. Conflict and partisan interests seem to have gotten the better of the dialogue process, and for now it seems not clear as to whether political parties are interested in discussing national issues. Should the process be abandoned? You're watching Sunday Interview with me, Grevazio Zulu, and our guest tonight is Forum for Democracy and Development President Edith Nawakwi. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Zulu. Good evening, viewers. How are you?
To start with, let me ask, you've been too quiet on the political scene. Are you contemplating quitting active politics?
No, I think that, Mr. Zulu, even in the Bible, people withdraw and reflect and feel. Sometimes you don't need to comment. You just need to look, feel, and wonder as to which way we are going. So there's a habit in our country that for every comment there's a counter comment. So I think that it has been good. And when people talk all the time and you are listening, you begin to see the way and you begin to feel the wear and tear of their mental capacity. And you understand why sometimes people just make empty statements which have no meaning. So I've been on the scene.
So are you among those politicians, maybe I should ask, that believe that after elections, maybe the ruling party should be allowed a bit of peace, respite to rule?
No, not really. I think that I've commented.
Without necessarily being criticized?
I've commented from time to time. I've commented about the issues of procurement. I've commented when it's necessary. I think just about last week I was in UTH. I did comment about the situation in UTH. But I'm not one of those who wants to comment all the time. Mind you, Mr. Zulu, I'm no longer a young girl. I'm mature. I'm much more thoughtful. I take my time now to comment on issues. And when I feel that my services are needed, I do actually provide those services to be able to see if I can bring the warring parties together.
So your political retreat, we must say it's over, if you want to call it that.
You called me to comment on the dialogue, so that's not a retreat. I've been working from the background.
Let's go to the dialogue now. It's a big issue, and it's been on the lips of many people and the agenda of the nation for a long, long time. Maybe I need us to define, what are we looking at? Is it national dialogue, inter-party dialogue? What should it be called?
I think at the stage where we are, let us be very, very clear. I think that the Bible is very clear in Proverbs 19 that the false witnesses shall be punished. And I've watched and observed the happenings on about the national dialogue per se with a great deal of concern that there are a lot of people who are not being truthful. I don't know what the agenda is. I get the feeling that maybe we drop the word national and put other acronyms that do not embrace everyone in there. Yeah, maybe political dialogue, because really when you say national dialogue, what is happening really is just so petty and personal that you can't call it national.
I've asked several other politicians that have sat in your chair, is it this difficult to get politicians in Zambia to discuss an issue of common good?
Well, I think that a lot of politicians have personal agendas. And when their personal agendas are revealed, then they run on the street. We have in the past sat and discussed, but I find the current happenings, I mean, short of a word, quite childish and immature. There's a lot of immaturity. And when I look around people sitting, I notice one odd thing. Whether you are meeting brothers and spiritual leaders in the church, you only have men at the table. Whether you are meeting the so-called politicians, You look around the room, you laugh and say, these are gentlemen who are discussing the so-called national dialogue, but the women are not there, the youth are not there. So what is national about this whole thing?
You have the youth, I think.
Well,
maybe not.
I think that's what, maybe that's what you have observed, but I'm making a very important point, that over 50% of the population of our country is women. You cannot sit at a table and start to make important decisions and
ignoring half of the population.
Ignoring half of the population. And I think it's dismal, it's unacceptable, and I think that we need to, from this process, ask the question, which way forward? And that's why I'm here.
Now, let's move on. It seems to be so complicated now, when the misunderstandings have moved from, initially we were given to understand it was between ZCID and the church driving the process. But now, just Friday, we had 13 parties that pulled out of the dialogue process of ZCID, citing a lot of issues. So where is the issue? Where is the problem? Is it between the church and the ZCID, or is it between factions in ZCID?
I think you need to understand clearly. When you say 13 political parties, here it's written the alliance of 12 political parties withdraws from insincere ZCID. Now, what is ZCID? ZCID is a trust which political parties formed. And the so-called alliances, they cannot say that they pull out and they call themselves alliance. ZCID doesn't have, in the trust deed, a description of political parties called alliance. What it has is FDD, UPND, and the parties, a forum of political parties outside parliament. So people should not mislead the public. This is a camouflage, so-called political alliances. This is a camouflage for UPND. UPND has collected young men and women who have walked into the registrar's office and registered their party and said these are alliances.
Some of them are strong parties, and not really strong per se, but some of them are not young people. You're looking at Charles Milupi, he's not a young man.
Yes, I have
Andy Ford is a young man, but look at his performance in the 2016 election. Not very bad.
I have great respect for brothers like Milupi, but I think the point I'm making is that you are defined by who you are surrounded. This document is authored by one Sean Tembo. For me, I met him for the first time this week. I don't know him.
Maybe he was signing on behalf of the parties.
I think the point that is made here is that clearly the deceit has come out. Maybe I take you to the genesis of this. After the launch at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross, myself and 4 other colleagues, we decided that we go and meet the bishops at Kapingira House. I personally went there. They were in a meeting. I waited until they were able to give us audience. And we said to them, look, I think they were, some of them were quite upset that we didn't show up at
the cathedral.
At the cathedral. They said it was prayers. We said no. I personally, as Edith Nawakwi, got an invitation which didn't have a venue or time. And I had not received, because they were advertising it as a launch, I had not received the program. When I finally got to have a program on WhatsApp, it even included a declaration to sign. I am aware that in previous arrangements, you would have discussed all those issues and known what programs you are going to undertake. So I didn't show up. But when there appeared to be so much acrimony, I thought other people were going there, but we noticed that only one political party in parliament had showed up, that's UPND. We decided with a few of our colleagues to meet the bishops. And we went there, we discussed, we asked them as to what are the issues between themselves and the Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue. And they actually told us what the issues were. We left the meeting with a promise that we would call back after meeting ZCID. We went and met ZCID. They told us that their differences had emanated from the meeting of the 28th, the previous month, when they had met and agreed that on the 27th, they would meet and sign a memorandum of understanding prior to the meeting of the Kapingila House. And on the 27th, when they were supposed to have meetings, someone from the church secretariat sent messages that the meeting was put off, but anyway, the meeting of the 28th was proceeding. Having told ZCID to invite people, they then decided to cancel the meeting because
which
when
should
they
have signed the MOU.
Yes,
to govern.
They
the
cancelled it
operation.
without a discussion. So I am told and briefed that they actually did contact the chairperson, who was on the way coming from Chipata to Lusaka, who was unaware of the cancellation of that.
So who cancelled the meeting?
Well, that is for them.
You met the bishops. They didn't tell you.
Yes, they said that the meeting of the 27th, that was cancelled by SMSs from the secretariat. I don't know the exact persons. I can't mention names here. But I'm telling you that that seems to have been the genesis of the fallout of each group. This group was saying, no, we had agreed on a program which you put off. And this group says, no, but how did you cancel that meeting? You have no respect. So there was that rift. So we volunteered, a group of us, myself, Honorable Mtati, Honorable Sakwiba Skota, Honorable Skota, Honorable Winter Kabimba. You will notice that that's a group which didn't go there to the cathedral. And we then took to the bishops a draft from ZCID to say to them, ZCID really wants you to sign a memorandum. In this memorandum, it was said that there would be a joint secretariat. It sets out on how they were going to work. Unfortunately, it appeared when we were meeting that their understanding was that when you say ZCID, you mean that the secretaries of political parties are going to sit at the secretariat with the church. No, it was just that ZCID executive, the officers, would sit to form the joint secretariat. The bishops said, if that's the case, we have no issue. Mind you, if you look at the launched agenda, in there, the program actually even indicates from the documents which we got from the cathedral of the meeting of the launch. The launch. You will see that people actually agreed that there be a joint secretariat. In fact, the bishops, when we met, there is no issue about
who's being untruthful in this matter. Because what we've
think
seen
the people
is people peddling the fact that the church does not want a joint secretariat.
No.
The church does not want a joint account.
Unless they've changed overnight. When we met them, they said they are not opposed to the joint secretariat.
And not opposed to joint management of accounts.
However, a word was said to us that you've just dropped the MOU, which was fair. We'll peruse through it and we'll call you. You understand that?
You have not been called.
No, wait. A few days later, the chairperson, my Lord Bishop Lungu, called me and said, your colleagues from UPND through Honorable Milupi will contact you. I had not been called because we were told that you've delivered this, we would like to peruse through it, which is fair, and come back to you. However, I think in good faith, my Lord Bishop called and said, one of your colleagues will call you. I actually did retort. I said, I doubt if I'll be called. Luckily, President Mirupi called President Sakwiba Skota. And that's when you see this merging of the two groups. He called and we were all telephoned each other. There's a call. He said, no, if someone is calling you to a meeting, let us meet. And the meeting took place. These are the meetings which Sean Tembo details in this document.
So this meeting, let's be very clear about it. This meeting, in effect, is a drawn battle between PF and its allied parties and UPND and its parties.
Who has told you that FDD is an allied party? You are using Sean Tembo's abusive language.
You use that on parties that have aligned to UPND, haven't you?
No, they've said the alliance. We have never stood up and said we are part of PF. This is what Sean Tembo has said, and that's why I'm here. Because, you see, they are peddling in an agenda which is very clear, which says that UPND has already won the 2021 elections. And unfortunately, they are drawing the church into their agenda. And the agenda has come in the open.
You're refusing to agree that there's a silent drawn line which seems to believe that there are parties which have grouped themselves Zulu, on one side
Mr.
and another
Zulu,
gang on one side.
Mr. Zulu, listen to me very, very carefully, because I'm explaining the sequence of events and how PF comes to the table. UPND and their alliance, which is spelled out, they've published that they have an alliance. FDD has never published that they are in alliance with PF. They met with the team that I have told you. And it was their proposal that at the following meeting, which they say was at the Secretariat of LAS, if it were possible, UPND party officials should be brought to the table, so that when we go back to the bishops, we are speaking to one MOU. Do you understand how PF comes to the table? So PF came to the table, then there was a subsequent meeting. Now, last week on Friday, they all met. I was not in town. They all met at Pamozi Hotel. And they went line by line. Now, went line by line on the memorandum, which memorandum was a document of ZCID. There were issues raised. They spent the whole day debating. And that meeting is recorded. They agreed. Then they nominated two people, Honorable Sakwiba Skota and Honorable Mirupi, to go and see the bishops so that they could present the document to the bishops and say, this is the agreed position.
By all political parties.
By all political parties, because at this point in time, PF is on the table, and Sean Tembo says very cordial meetings.
Alliance versus the rest.
Of course, I mean,
yes, alliance versus all the other parties. Yes.
But I take great exception to characterizing me an affiliate. I like to state that I am the oldest politician in this country, and I've been in opposition for a very long time. I don't like this consequence with this some of these parties which have just woken up by night and start to characterize.
I did interrupt you. Yes, the parties now agreed.
The parties agreed. No, the parties agreed and nominated two people. The alliance chairperson, Honorable Mirupi, and Sakwiba Skota, to go and approach the bishops and say, this is our document. So they left to go and meet the bishops. I don't know whether it was the second day or the third day, because, by the way, I was out of town. When they got to the bishops, they were then given a document saying, these are our comments. And from what they said when they were briefing us back, the whole group, is that when we got there, we were surprised that the bishops had a copy. And they did ask, who brought this copy? And the bishops were gracious enough to say it was Sean Tembo. Now, was Sean Tembo the designated officer to go and take the message to the bishops? The answer is no. How did he deliver it? He sat on his own, made alterations, and those are highlighted. And then went and handed to the bishops and said, this is a document. And I can tell you, wherever it appears that there is an objection, it is a replica of the objection that the UPND and Sean Tembo and group were raising in that meeting, which was discussed extensively, agreed or disagreed. You understand there? That's a deceit.
What you are saying now is that there was no agreement.
No,
because the other party still walked out with their own document.
No,
and took it
but
to the bishop.
if that was the case, then there would not have been a delegation of two to go and approach the bishops to make an appointment for Tuesday to meet at 15 hours. The point I'm telling you is that on what basis did Sean Tembo break ranks and go to deliver a document when he wasn't an envoy? And why did he alter the document?
Maybe that's the question somebody should ask you as a team.
I mean,
at what point did an individual from a group that was so organized decide to break away?
But this is now the genesis of the so-called, we didn't agree, but we told them when we met and said, listen, comrades, we all agreed, and the process of that meeting was recorded. There's an audio which we want to play. And then that's when they started saying, no, that's not the spirit and what. Now, the others obviously got irritated, because once you spend 2 days discussing and agreeing, then people take you back. They got irritated, and that's what you hear. PF walked out. It was a long day in the evening, about 19 or so hours. That's when the other says, because Hakainde said, the President Hakainde Hichilema said, if you don't remove joint, then we can't proceed. If you don't change item 3.1, which is a memorandum detailing that the program will follow the Siavonga agenda, which agenda? I actually, as we met the bishops, I said, look, the program of reform cannot proceed if we do not take the papers to Parliament by June this year. Many people are just debating. They don't even understand the legislative calendar of this country. We have one year to go before people get into serious campaign. Who is going to sit in that Parliament and start changing legislation? So for us as politicians, we are interested in constitutional reform. Mind you, we had stopped the PF from going ahead with constitutional reform, which the changing of the constitution, which they had started. They were almost publishing the bill. So you all know what you want, but you don't know how to get it. No, my own understanding is that it has come to be reviewed in this. UPND seems to want to go to the 2021 elections under the current
document signed by UPND.
Well, it's signed by the chairperson of the Media Alliance, and this is this says the Alliance of Political Parties, which includes UPND. And here they are talking that they have won the 2021 elections as an alliance, and that they just wanted a formality for the church to manage the transition. For me, this tells me a lot. And if people are saying that there is an agenda for regime change, it's spelled out in this document. So now,
what you are saying is that conflict for 2021 has already started?
Of course, that's what they're saying, and that's treasonous.
That's what you are saying as politicians.
No, I'm not saying that.
It's already started. You can't agree on this.
You know what, Mr. Zulu? I think that there are certain people you listen to, they don't know how to get where they are going. Even after PF walked out, I remained with, I think there was President Scotta and Honorable Chifumu Banda. We remained. And we addressed our colleague, President Hakainde, and said, look, this program is about constitutional reform. We need to change the Electoral Process Act. We need a new Public Order Act. We need to institute civility in politics. This is the agenda of Siavonga, which all secretaries signed. And I said to him, listen, if we don't get PF, because whatever we discuss, whether we go to Siavonga, whether we go to Nakonde, eventually the people with the pain are those in government. So now that we've drawn them to the table and we can sit as political parties in the opposition and government, let us agree on the legislative reform. All these demands, if you want people to discuss human rights, as long as I get government to agree that we are going to redo the constitution, Part 3 will talk about human rights. There are institutions of government which are there, such as the Anti-Corruption Commission. They fall under the Constitution of the Republic. So all I need as a smart person is to get government to agree that we are undertaking a review of the current rushed constitution. I don't need to start talking about where is my shoe, where is my belt. I don't. I need to get to the core business. And there's a way of negotiating with colleagues. You don't just say, if you don't agree, then I'm walking out. Then you are the one who has caused the walkout. And that's exactly what happened. Because he said, if you don't agree to to change, to add to 3.1 and remove the joint secretariat, then there's no business. But having met the bishops,
you have among your colleagues,
having met the bishops, I know that they were not objecting to the joint secretariat. Mind you, there have been worries that if we don't get, for example, if you look at the invitations of the meeting which took place at the cathedral, some parties were omitted from the list. Some, I mean, the church want to know where everybody lives. So if we have ZCID, at least there will be the protocol and the order, because there are people who are used to dealing with politicians. And all we were saying is that the joint secretariat be composed of the executive director for ZCID and other professionals who may have to be hired from outside.
So the conclusion here is that politicians are full of confusion.
Particularly
ZCID, because I mean,
no,
some politicians sat in here and misled the public that the church was against the joint secretariat and against the joint account. And it was in the media that the church didn't want accounts jointly managed. And people believed that, and it was coming from politicians.
I don't know, because the two issues that I see which were sticking was the joint secretariat and joint accounts. Now, from my meeting with the bishops, I didn't see that to be an issue. And why would anyone refuse to have a joint account? Because that's either public money, or because you don't really, if you're going to do a program, and this constitutional reform was programmed that by June 2019, all the drafts should be before Parliament. Now, if we don't get these drafts before Parliament, then we are done. We are going to go to 2021 under the current constitution. And I believe the current Electoral Process Act provides for extreme chaos. The form G20, G12. Isn't that the source of problems? People will stand up and say, I didn't see form G12. I mean, where is it? And the people have found the value in that, whether you are on this divide, that divide. Why doesn't UPND stand up and say, really, the core business that they are in is politics, and therefore let us sit down and make sure that we have a new Electoral Process Act, which will spell clearly how, after you tally the votes, how you're going to move them, whether they are from each polling precinct or in fact they are going to be transmitted. My own view is that people like the chaos that ensues. I have testified in the past.
When you talk about people enjoying the chaos, you're not really talking about the ruling party, who often you opposition people accuse of rigging.
Well, I mean,
the ruling party is on the table and the opposition don't want to talk, including yourself, maybe.
What do you mean the opposition don't want to talk? I have said that I went to the bishops to find out how we could salvage the process. Shoni Tembo says he went to the bishops, so it depends on who is right. But the bishop called me and said, President Milupi wants to see you. And that was a beginning. I think that was a very good idea, isn't it? That was the beginning of all of us coming together. And UPND are the ones who said, please, we are short of one member here. Where's PF? And for the first time, we had PF on the table. I thought that was a golden opportunity. We would have gone to the bishops and said, hey, we have agreed. This is how we are proceeding. Can you start with these issues? And we put a very strong case to the bishops that all this agenda, cultural reform, disability, gender inequality, look, let us first deal with the issues that divide us pre and post elections. Because we are politicians. That's our main agenda.
So when you speak to the church agenda, it speaks to a national dialogue where the governed also have to speak. But when you talk to inter-party dialogue, you're looking at all these core issues of
well, we are not opposed to the church carrying on with a national dialogue. But I want every Zambian to understand that unless we are satisfied with the current Public Order Act, with the current Electoral Process Act, with the current constitution, the primary focus of the political dialogue is on the 4 issues. And those 4 issues, once addressed, they have a tendency to reduce. The impact of that will be to reduce the pre-elections and post-election violence, because everybody will be clear of the rules. Right now, our chairperson for elections doesn't have power. I think you know what happened in Namwala. When we went to the chairperson's office, he said, this is a police case, go to the police. But in other jurisdictions, you have the electoral chairperson, electoral commission chairperson, having absolute power over the conduct of elections, so that the players know that they are subject to the terms and conditions as stipulated by the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. In our country, the chairperson just is a referee without power. Even in football, at least the linesman has power. Our referee has no authority. And these are the issues we wanted to agree on. These are the issues that they sat in Siavonga and agreed on. I think that there is an agenda beyond the political dialogue. And the agenda has been unveiled here, where someone says they've already won the, the 2021 elections. So maybe they are now preparing petitions for filing in 2021.
Do you think there are valid points in the document that has been prepared by the alliance?
I think that it's full of deceit. It's full of claims which are not true.
Objectively analyzing their objection.
You know what? The deceit in which they have cleverly woven, entangled the church in a very, very deceitful way, pretending that there's a difference between what they want and what other people want. What I think is the problem is here is this, that there would be no issue about the joint secretariat. And if you say to me, hey, Nawakwi, let's have a joint account, and I say to you, I don't want, why would I not want that? If you look to the agenda, there are provincial conferences. I'm a politician. And someone is telling me that they are going to gather all the headmen in Lusaka, all the chiefs in Lusaka. Which chiefs? How are they going to stay? Who is going to be responsible for paying for them? And someone is telling me that they've already won. So what am I doing in the political arena? What am I doing if someone has already won the elections? What am I doing? And therefore, why would you take, who would pay for those road shows to the provinces? Who would pay those road shows to the provinces? And in here, someone is saying that the church is supposed to formalize their winning. I think that the agenda...
Have they clearly stated that the church will formalize our winning?
Of course.
Are you interpreting that?
I'm interpreting it correctly. We do not see, they say, the possible success of the national dialogue and reconciliation process as a prerequisite to winning the 2021 elections, general election, but rather as merely a complementary for them to win the 2021 election. You understand that? A successful national dialogue and reconciliation process would ensure a peaceful transition of power in 2021, which they have won. Whereas a failed national dialogue and reconciliation process will bring about a chaotic transition of power in 2021. Whatever the case, we in the oppositional alliance are confident beyond any shadow of doubt that there will be a transition of power in 2021. The only question is what type? Chaotic or peaceful? I mean, who is preaching violence? Who is preaching violence? And that is where the ongoing dialogue and reconciliation process comes in. You understand
are you not exaggerating the interpretation? Considering that every politician is going to say, I'm winning an election. Even yourself, you would say you're winning.
Yes, I do, but I don't loop the church in that. I don't say I'm going to church so that I win the elections. This is very clear. This is an agenda. And
by the church, you mean?
Am I interpreting it wrong? Maybe you read it out yourself.
How would an agenda be achieved if the church is not concerned, is not involved? Are you saying the church is backing the opposition?
What I'm saying is that there's a very clear attempt by UPND to try and loop the church into their agenda. The church are innocently trying to carry on a program, but there is a veiled agenda, a hidden agenda, which unfortunately someone foolishly has brought to the fore.
Do you agree? Do you agree with the agenda of the church, which talks about serious national dialogue involving the headmen, the chiefs? It's too wide.
It's too broad, and I've expressed my views on that. And that's why, for me, when I met the bishops, I clearly said there are 4 issues. That's you summarize them governance, and political reform. That's how it's summarized. They can add the issues. I mean, it's a prerogative to talk about religious dialogue, cultural dialogue. It's their prerogative. I mean, the church has a broader mandate.
They should
but,
go. They should go to promises. You believe they should go.
I mean, look, they can do what they want. But how does that fit in with the political calendar of this country? We are having elections in 2021. Several other people have already won. And how does it fit in the legislative calendar? Those are not in tandem. The legislative calendar for this particular issue must be concluded by June this year. Otherwise, we will not have any reforms. We are going back to the elections under the current terms and conditions. So, and therefore, how do you proceed?
What is the way forward? Maybe I should ask.
The way forward for me is that we cannot spend 8 months debating to and fro. ZCID, church, what? We have had constitutional reform before, not under the church. My proposal, if people were to listen to me, is that there are eminent legal brains in this country who can chair the party that I'm interested in. That is the constitutional and political reform.
Abandon dialogue?
Well, the dialogue can continue, but please let us deal with the issues that are urgent. And the issues that are urgent is that we need to clean up the Constitution. Therefore, after cleaning up the Constitution, there is a issuing legislative reforms for the subsidiary legislation, such as the Electoral Process Act, the other acts, the Public Order Act. All those have to come in after you have cleaned up the Constitution. And at the pace at which we are going, I see that we will not do it until 2040. Because it appears to me that there are different interest groups. And you remember initially the church said they were not interested in money. So I wouldn't see that having a joint account would be much of the interest on the church. But in this particular matter, since these things are becoming so hot, so heated, my advice is that a process like this now should be funded by the taxpayers for the specific agenda of legislative reform. We have many former chief justices who are retired. We have many draftspersons who are retired. You can talk of our
it should be another constitutional review commission?
No.
A technical committee?
No,
a parallel process to dialogue?
I think that,
I just want you to be clear on what you're proposing.
I think that we should divide the issues. What is it that is impacting negatively on governance? Is the government's inability to give us a constitution that the people are happy with. And therefore, it's incumbent upon this government to make sure that we have a constitution that will be put in place so that we are allowed to have other subsidiary legislation. I think, do we need really a national dialogue to talk about proportional representation when there are very few women in the house there, when there are very few youths in the house? We have all agreed on certain things. There's been a constitutional review commission after constitutional review commission. You just put people on this table and say, well, today we're talking about the Public Order Act. By the way, Mr. Zulu, under ZCID arrangements, every political party had seminars on the Public Order Act. We even invited people from the police, from the Justice Department, and we put them to task. Why do you people apply this in a certain way? And they pointed out, look, do we have any powers? You leave us with the following open ends for us to abuse. Such meetings have been conducted by interested stakeholders. If you ask me, I was in a meeting for almost 3-4 days discussing the Public Order Act. In that meeting, there were people from the Zambia police, civil society. They were educating us in FDD. What are your views? Which clauses do you really are upset with under the Public Order Act? And we have a page on what we need changed in the Public Order Act. We don't need another constitutional review commission for that.
So you want a technical committee? What do we call it?
I don't know what
I
don't know what personally, I would just want to have a drafting committee to get on with the work of legislative
redrafting the constitution
legislative
and
reform.
where do they take it? Parliament straight?
Well, we should agree
as political parties?
We should agree as the stakeholders which stake is there, but at the pace we are going, I'm inclined to say that the government needs to take leadership and responsibility.
I mean, you are facing, you need to agree that we are facing a very unique situation. It's not been the case in the past that government is so willing to discuss. The ruling party is so willing to dialogue.
This is
very unique case.
This is my
in the
frustration.
past, ruling parties have been very cagey and they've been difficult to come to the table.
This is
but
my
now the ruling party can
frustration.
come on one phone call and they're with you at Pamosi and you can.
This is my frustration,
as
and that's what
opposition.
I told my brother. I said, you know what, my brother HH, for now we have the opportunity of having government willing to change this. Let us seize the moment and change those issues which are really impacting on the free movement of human beings in this country. And he left and said, I agree with you, let us proceed. Since our colleagues have walked out, can you please follow up the issue? And I went happily, thinking that we had made progress. I was just taken aback by this rubbish here.
Have you made contact with
no,
for instance,
I haven't.
Mr.
We normally get, we had tasked President Sakuba Skota to interface with President Milupi. I think for the whole of yesterday he tried to contact him. They had agreed to meet and they didn't meet.
So you are reacting from a very junior officer, isn't it? From the alliance?
No, I mean, they met. They had a meeting. I think they kept on saying, we'll call you when we finish the meeting. This was a result of a serious meeting, a whole day's meeting. This was a result of a whole day's meeting.
So what we're looking at in terms of a change, legal reforms, judicial reforms, electoral reforms, and
I think that when you look at, for example, the judicial reforms, when the people went to meet and ZCID, they have been working extensively to try and identify key issues that require reform. If you look at the judiciary, for example, you can't place where the Constitutional Court lies and where the Supreme Court lies. And they have concluded that this is a matter which requires discussion and agreement. If you look at the petition of 14 days, for example, a presidential petition, is 14 days adequate? They agreed and discussed and said that maybe 30 days would be the better option. And these are issues which you need to discuss to and fro. And they identified a whole host of issues that require reform, and put them in a format that all would understand. For example, clarification the relationship between the Supreme Court versus the Constitutional Court, devolution of governance, constitution amendment process, adopting constitution by People's Assembly, or what do we do? I think these issues have been discussed in the past, and there have been commissions in the past which have dealt with these issues. Enhancement of the independence of the legislature, petitions, those issues were discussed. And this is a compendium of issues compiled by what they refer to as insincere ZCID, structure of government, separation of powers, measures enhancing the independence of the legislature, parliament, and electoral commission. We need to discuss the electoral commission, as I've alluded to, that our chairperson needs powers to execute the hammer on aiding candidates. You cannot have a parliamentary candidate or a councillor injuring their colleague and continue to run, leave them outside and go to enjoy the fruits of being a legislator in the house. And continue
campaigning. Now,
yes,
I'm
and
going
go
to
and
ask,
bribe the police.
You mentioned that the church gave you back a document which they had highlighted some points. Are you saying they adopted the stance of the alliance?
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I was surprised that the one which we gave them, I was still waiting for comments. However, I do accept that they did say to us that your colleagues are going to contact you, but it wasn't said that I'm going to be contacted so that we have a common position, but the ensuing meetings were very productive. And I think that's how a chairperson must work, isn't it? Go and discuss with your colleagues and come back. And out of that discussion, there was a document which everybody agreed But one Sean Tembo sneaked a copy to the bishops. Can you imagine how embarrassing?
Is that an alliance document? What are we calling it?
I don't know. I mean, it's...
Is it a Sean Tembo document, an alliance document?
I think it's an alliance document because when we met at Pamozi, they were now referring to say the church has commented. We said, no, we haven't met them. Why are you speaking on behalf of the bishops? We were supposed to meet them. Now, who is this person who went to deliver the document? And who gave them authority? All we are waiting for is for the bishops to tell us that this matter, we don't agree. Then we discuss the pros and cons and agree. You understand that? That's a procedural way. You don't go to a board meeting, sneak a document out and go and give it to other people, and then it's presented back to the board and said, no, this is our comment. We were actually shocked that that kind of breach of trust could happen. But luckily, when someone has a scheme, it gets to be exposed. And that is the genesis of what you see here. Because when that happened in the meeting, people were not happy. They said, we agreed, we moved forward. The joint secretariat was there. There were some alterations and amendments which were made. Those were incorporated. Why do we go back to the beginning? And that's not the way you conduct a meeting. Now we are all agreed. Let's go. If the bishops have issues, we will address them at the table with the bishops. I think that was procedural. And then they were saying, no, let's meet. And no, look, let's make progress. This is the progress you have seen.
The statement by the alliance seemed to accuse ZCID of manipulating the minutes.
They were told, let us play the audio tape. And none of them agreed to listen to their comments on the audio tape. Because they were even asked as to whether their changes were an afterthought or reconsideration of their position. And they were told, if you say, as an afterthought, I've changed my position, we'll discuss that. But state why you're moving from the agreed position to this new position. And some of us who had met the bishops, I know that they were not objecting to the joint secretariat.
They're not objecting to either of the two that are on the table. Joint secretariat, joint account.
And why would anyone object to a joint account, honestly? And I think that that's why other people start to be suspicious. Who's going to put money in the joint account? And if it's donors, they must be told that it's dangerous to put money in a system which is not going to be transparent. And that's why, for me, at this point in time, I think that government should take responsibility of the legislative changes, because that's their business. The business. They
were waiting for you. I remember that President.
Yeah, we can submit Lungu our comments.
Justice Minister to hold the process.
Yes, we had
to allow you to input.
I had publicly differed with the way the government was approaching the constitutional reform, because I said they had not consulted us, and we then issued on a program of going through as to what our views would be in certain clauses. And these are the issues that have now been concretized. These are the issues for reform. And these are the issues we take back and say, we want this, we want this. And therefore, we thought the best way to deal with it is get an umbrella, because some people are not talking to each other. Get an umbrella where the church chairs that kind of meeting. And this is a meeting which has now become so bitter and sour. So maybe it's time to find a different route. Abandon
inter-party dialogue.
I mean, is it inter-party dialogue or what?
National dialogue.
Inter-party fighting.
Well, maybe that's part of dialogue.
Inter-party circus. I mean, this is now becoming an inter-party circus.
Maybe that's part of dialogue.
I don't know.
Manage the circus and eventually get the best out of it.
If some people think that by behaving like they are holier than thou, others must be painted black. And I think that's the purpose of it, is that some people will be seen that they are tagging along with the church and the others are not. But I think that the bishops are also men who can see through such kind of schemes. But unfortunately, as things are, here it is, the church is being brought to the table in a very awkward way, that the dialogue is meant to to anoint one person.
Are you suggesting that there are members among the opposition or among political parties undermining the process?
Of course, this is undermining the process.
For whose benefit?
For the benefit of the alliance, because they perfected the art of getting votes by the Mapatizia solution, Mapatizia formula.
Are you unjustifiably accusing them?
No, I'm not. I mean, that's...
I think you are.
I am not. I'm not. I mean, I have experience of Namwala. I have the experience of our people being in polling stations in Southern Province and being told, my opposition will burn your houses. I'm talking from facts. I'm talking from a fact that in Namwala, our candidate was brutalized and the Electoral Commission could not do anything. And the police could not do anything. People were being threatened even in court, and that matter has fallen through. I'm talking from a fact that you go to PF areas, you go to the police at Central Police. This has been going on for time immemorial. You report a political case to the police say, well, I have children to take to school. So who is benefiting from that? It's those who feel that they are stronger than others. And they are stating it in writing that they are so strong.
So there's arrogance of numbers from whichever side.
Of course, that's the way I see it.
As we conclude, what are the major points now, and take-home points?
The major
there's
points,
this confusion.
The major point is that when there's confusion, people retreat and must reflect as to why they are where they are. We are where we are because of dishonest, and people are not putting all the cards on the table. And therefore, we must retreat and say what is the most important activity that we must undertake. I think it's constitutional reform. I think that we need to get the Public Order Act done. We need to get the Electoral Process Act done. We need to have some civility in politics and get on with it. And people must be called out when they behave like this. I don't believe that a young man as young as Sean Tembo should be allowed to mess up the process because they've been given unfettered access to certain institutions. I don't think that that's right. And I think that in all, as I did mention to one of them, I said, you see, the major losers is not even these people who are conducting themselves in an becoming manner. The major losers are the people of Zambia. If we can't get our act together, we are going to go back, as I rightly said, to a chaotic electoral process. But for me, I take it that that's what they want. They don't want reforms because this chaotic electoral process has benefited them in the past.
That you are accusing the alliance. Is that what you stated? That the alliance does not want a smooth electoral process?
I'm saying exactly that the alliance does not want a smooth electoral process. If they wanted, they would have found a way to sit at the table. They would have seen the value in constitutional reform. They would have seen the value in reforming the Public Order Act. They would have seen the value in giving powers to the Electoral Commission. They would have seen the value that men and women come and go. Institutions of governance should outlive our personal gain, our personal interest. They would have seen that, but there is no realization of that in this particular conduct. And we have, some of us were accused that we didn't go to the dialogue. I think that we have done our best, and our best is falling on deaf ears. And at that point, it's a high time we say, it shall be written in history that Edith Nawakwi, as an individual, she tried to bridge the divide.
You are withdrawing from mediating. From trying to bring the two parties.
I mean, look, I'm facing men on both sides, whether it's the church, whether it's the opposition, whether it's my side. I'm facing men. And the sad part of it, I am the oldest politician and probably one who should be proud to say I've got a bit of experience in terms of seeing beyond just the moment, that we should live not for the moment but for the future. You look out on the street, you look out in classrooms, you go to the hospitals, you say part of what we are suffering from is that we have an imperfect constitution, and we have the opportunity now where government is saying, we stopped government, by the way, give them credit. We stopped them from proceeding. By now, would have had a new constitution, would be dealing with subsidiary legislation. And the time is going, and government is going to come back to us and say, look, you told us to stop, we stopped. We wanted this process to take place, you failed. So we can't do it anymore, time has gone. And I'm saying that time has gone for the simple reason. In January and December, they deal with the budget. In April, when they convene, they deal with other government issues. The only open window for legislation, the legislative window, is June. And I don't know, UPND has the largest opposition in the House. I don't know if they don't understand the legislative calendar. We shouldn't waste time on, no, this
on Joint Secretariat.
Hey, Baba.
It's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zulu.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was FDD President, Ms. Edith Nawakwi. We'll be back next week sometime. Pleasant viewing.